A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video.
So there's one mistake that I've always made in my landscape photography. If I go back to the early days of when I first went to Iceland, I think it was in 2002, and you look at some of these photos, then what you'll probably see is that there's lots and lots of different locations. I remember I went with my wife, we were there for 2 weeks, we went all the way around. It was a time in Iceland when there was a dirt track along the ring road for a lot of it. And we spent a lot of time there, but we didn't spend a lot of time in individual locations. And that happens a lot when you go on vacation or you go on a trip. You tend to see lots of places, but not one for a long time. And at first glance, it might seem fairly obvious that that is not a good idea. You need to spend more time. But the reason you need to spend more time isn't so obvious. So what I want to do is go through that in a little bit more detail in this video. And I guarantee you, if you do spend more time, then the landscape will definitely give back to you.
It happened again. I've stayed for too long and I woke up at your place again.
So I've just finished a 4-day workshop in the Lake District, an autumn workshop. It was fantastic. We had varied weather, but we got something out of the workshop, and that wasn't just amazing photos, but it was just the experience of being in nature and being, in those conditions. It was interesting actually. A lot of the people on the workshop, I make it sound like there's loads of people in the workshop. There was 4. But they all said they probably wouldn't have gone out in some of the conditions that we went out in. It was raining, and we were stood for maybe hours on end in the rain, sometimes just waiting for those right conditions. And one of the things that always comes up on a workshop is composition. But it's one of 4 elements that I talk about all the time. I first mentioned it in this video here, and that is subject, light, composition, and timing. And what I wanted to do is delve a little bit more into timing in this video, but talk about why timing is important and why, if you use it correctly and observe the landscape and try and sort of feel the landscape a little bit more, then that can output a better photo. So I want to go in some of the obvious things and some of the less obvious things. And of course, I've got some prints to sort of go through and talk about whilst I talk about some of these particular things as well. So one of the things that I always say is that if you spend longer in one place, then that place, the landscape, will give back to you. And I think that is so important. I think, people take for granted that with landscape photography. Obviously, if you go and do some wildlife photography, then you're probably going to sit in a blind, or you're just going to wait for the birds to come or the deer to come. And it's fairly obvious that timing's important. If you're going to do some sports photography, it's fairly obvious that timing's important. The same with street photography. But with landscape photography, I think timing's important, not just about timing the moment right, but getting the time to be in that landscape as well, and sort of enveloping yourself in that landscape so you can feel it a little bit better. It's why I always have an apple and sit down and just don't use my camera, because it really makes such a big difference. One of the things that I always say is that when you get to a particular location, then you need to sit down and you just need to take it in. Don't get your camera out, don't get your phone out, and then you need to think, what's giving you goosebumps? What's the thing about that landscape that's making you tingle a little bit? What's getting you really excited? Is it a bit of light? Is it the lily pads, as in this photo that I'll talk about in a little bit, that are just looking really amazing? Is it the dew on the grass? Is it just the silence that you want to sort of try and portray in a photo? And it's those things that get you really excited, that the things that you should probably concentrate on. And what you want to try and do is then get rid of all the other things. You want to try and make a photo as simple as possible and concentrate on the things in that sort of location that are really making you tingle.
Thought he'd be someone else, that it would take me a while, but right next to you.
So take this for example. This was Buttermere. We'd arrived and I'd done some planning on the photographer's ephemeris 3D to work out when the sun was going to hit these trees. I'd actually made a complete balls of it because I'd forgot we're on British summertime, so I got it an hour wrong. So we were there a little bit earlier, so we had even more time. And actually, the sun didn't appear on these trees. We didn't get it. There was too much clouds. But whilst we were there observing, the rain was coming through, the sun was lighting up the rain from the back, and the photo that we came to take, which was these trees illuminated by the sun, was something that just went to the back of our minds, really. Then what we were trying to do is photograph this amazing rain as it just came through, and then when it was backlit by the sun, it just looked stunning. And that's what got our attention. That's what, were the goosebump moments. And yeah, we got soaked, we had to hide under a tree, we were there for, a good few hours, I can't remember how long, probably 2.5 hours, just waiting. And I guarantee, if I'd have gone back 3 or 4 years, I'd have probably left an hour earlier, and I wouldn't have got this photo. And this photo just made it, really. It isn't the photo I went for, but it's got that something special. It's got a feeling for me. When I look at it, it reminds me of what I felt like when I was in that particular location. And it's that capturing a feeling that's really important. You're not taking the actual photo, the place. You're trying to take a feeling away with that image. Okay, let's have a look at one of the prints here. This was a different location. It was actually later in the same day where we'd gone and hiked up what's called Castle Crag here. And we got this image. Now, if I just put it down here. So this was an image that was all about the timing. We'd arrived here in this location, and I think there's a few other photographers that had arrived just before us and had gone down, so they'd probably been up for quite a few hours. But I'm not sure the light was quite as good when they were here. Now, I don't know how long they'd been here for, but it's happened to me so many times when I've gone down after waiting a long time, and then suddenly everything changes. But we timed it quite well, so we were a bit lucky there. But what we did do is we stayed here for a few hours, and we just observed this one scene. We didn't try and find different compositions. We observed this one scene as the light was changing on the landscape, and we got this dappled light coming through, and I took a lot of photos. So I took different photos, and what we all saw was that the light, as it hit this sort of ridge here, looked really nice, and especially when it caught this tree. We had these nice sort of light rays coming down, and I've edited a few different photos, and some have got better light rays on. I like this one because it's just catching enough here just to look really good. I wasn't too much about blowing the highlights out there. After all, the sun was here, so I'm not going to expose for the sun very well. It doesn't matter, it captures that feeling really well. And as we were here and looking at this scene, then we started to see different things. We started to see how the light was interacting with it. We started to see things that we could include or exclude in the scene. So there was some other trees down at the bottom right here, which I felt probably just complicated the scene, whereas my first image included those trees, but my final image didn't. And I started to observe it a little bit more. I had time to go up into a different location with the group, and we could see it from a slightly different vantage point. Then we realised that wasn't that great. We went back down here, and we spent a lot of time observing the scene, and it made such a big difference to getting this image. If we'd have come, spent an hour, taken a few shots and gone down, we wouldn't have got as good a shot. We needed to spend a good few hours here just really waiting for the right light. And it worked. It made a big difference. So just a little bit about this. I also took it with two different cameras. I had a longer lens, my 50 to 140 on my FUJI, and then I also had my 24 to 70 millimeter lens on my Nikon, it happened that around 70mm was about the right focal length. So this is a 70mm crop of the scene. I think I've cropped a little bit at the left and right here. When I edited it, what I wanted to do was, again, just emphasize this. I've not done a huge amount of editing, but I did take 2 exposures really in quick succession, one exposed for here and one exposed for there. But then when I was actually editing it in Lightroom, I ended up just bringing up this and bringing up the shadows in this and just editing one photo, because when I combined them it didn't make a big difference. But it's always a good idea to get 2 shots if you can. I don't use graduated filters because I just feel like they're a hindrance, and if anything, I try and reduce the amount I use my filters. And I've got a video coming out next week all about filters and my use of filters and what filters I now use and how I use them. So make sure you check that out. Okay, so let's go on to another scene, which again is all about timing. So this was back at this location here, which was where I took this lily shot, which I'll come to. But it was a shot just around the corner. It's one of my favourite places, this, and it is Elterwater. So Elterwater is just such a beautiful, beautiful place. There's so many different compositions, and this is Harrison Stickle, which is one of the Langdale Pikes in the Lake District. So I'll just put this down here. When you first see this, you think, okay, it's a nice shot. I've taken a lot of shots here, but again, it was an interesting one with timing, because we'd arrived, we'd taken a few other shots, and then we arrived here, and we'd actually been to this location previously in the workshop, and this was our last morning. Now, it's really easy, especially when you're on a workshop and everybody wants to see different locations, to try a different location. But because we'd been here and we knew the conditions were going to be good, I felt it best to go back to this location, because we all knew it, we all knew where a good composition was. So then we could concentrate on actually getting the timing right and making sure that we get the timing right, especially because what I wanted to try and do is isolate Harrison Stickle here. And the clouds changed, and at first when we arrived there, Harrison Stickle was covered by the clouds, and then we just had this moment where it was just uncovered enough just to reveal it, just to give a little bit of a glimpse of the peak, and it looked stunning. And then the fog cleared, it just completely cleared, and it transformed the scene completely. You know, if you look at this drone footage, you can see it's very different. Now I've got another shot of this, which I'll show you on screen, which is just of a swan coming round, which I like as well, and I suppose that's got timing in terms of the swan and of the cloud, but I don't tend to include wildlife in my shots too much, so I do prefer this one. In terms of editing this, I've just not done a huge amount really. I've lightened the shadows a little bit, and I've tweaked with the HSL slider just to give the right level of green and orange that I liked, and I've slightly toned the highlights to be a little bit warmer as well, because I felt like that's the feeling I had on this morning. It was really peaceful, calm, and I just felt warm really as well, because there was some nice sunlight coming through. Now, the other thing that we did was we took this shot on the same morning. So this is some lily pads, and again this was a shot that we'd been to 2 days earlier, and what this meant was that we could go back to this and take this shot again. And why this is better than the previous one is that there's more fog, and we really like the sort of juxtaposition between the really dark sort of river here with these really nice lilies on, and then moving up to this really sort of ethereal top. And again, it just for me portrayed the feeling of the morning really. It was quite a serene morning, and yeah, it was just really peaceful. I really think this is one of my favourite photos I took last week, and you know, it took a bit of finding, it took a bit of observing. The first time that we went, we looked around loads, and it was right at the end, I think, that we actually found this composition. And you know, if we hadn't have been there for a good few hours, we wouldn't have found it. So you've just got to try and observe the surrounding. Now, in terms of this shot, I took it on a wide angle lens, so I think it was about 22mm, and my camera was just tilted down. So one thing I've talked about before is that if you're shooting like this, you know, and a wide angle, you need to turn your camera down. So it's really important not to just have it straight on, but down with a wide angle lens. And then what you get is you get a bit of depth to the shot like this, which makes a really big difference. So yeah, I really like that. And I was really pleased with all these shots actually. I think it was a really successful outing. We got some fantastic shots, and it just proves what you can do. If you spend a little bit more time in those locations, you start to understand them a little bit more. I know I talk about this a lot, but it's that observation that's key. And God, isn't landscape photography just so amazing when you have mornings like this? And what I'd say is sort of some parting words is please, please, please don't get your camera out. Don't be tempted when you get to a location and everything's fantastic straight away. Just try and engulf that atmosphere. Just try and look around and see which things are really stimulating those feelings. What gives you goosebumps? Because if you get your camera out too early, then all you're doing is you're just looking at the world through your camera rather than through your eyes. And what you need to do is just take it all in before you get your camera out. I hope that's helped. I'm really passionate about this. I really believe it's something that can massively change your photography if you just observe and have time to observe rather than just take photos. Photography is an art. It's not a science. It's not about settings. It's not about cameras. It's about feelings and trying to translate those feelings onto eventually, hopefully, a print that you're really proud to hang on your wall.
Thought he'd be someone else, but it would take me a while. But right next to you now, I'm sleeping. No rhyme or reason to that. If this is what love.
So I just wanted to say a quick word about Squarespace, who are sponsoring this episode. I thought I'd mention a bit about my template actually that I use to build my website. I use a template called Bedford. So if you go into their site, I'll show it now, you can use different templates as a starting point, which makes it really easy to build your site. And I used Bedford, and then that sort of is sort of the skeleton of your site, I suppose, the look and feel of it, the fonts in it, the colours in it, and that I felt that was a really clean template, and it also allows you to have some flexibility as well around the homepage, whether you put an image on there or a video on there, which was really good. The other thing I should say is I have got new prints now on my website, so go and take a look. Anyway, thanks for Squarespace for sponsoring. If you're looking to get a domain or a website, then make sure you go to squarespace.com. And if you're ready to purchase a website, then you can get 10% off by going to squarespace.com/Nigel, or you can use offer code Nigel. Anyway, thanks ever so much for watching. I'm off to Scotland now. I'm really excited, and we're in 2 workshops, one in Torridon and one in Skye. Make sure you check out my Instagram because I'm going to be posting loads of stories and hopefully some photos as well. So if you're not following me on Instagram, then you can follow me here. Yeah, I'm sure I'll have some videos from Scotland as well. Anyway, until next Sunday, bye.